September 24th, 2024. Well, I want to address the state of the presidential and the races in general on this video. Um, so, um, well, let's kind of get into it. Of course, there's a lot of polling out now, and look, as of this recording, the Real Clear Politics average has gone to 2.2% in favor of Harris. That's up from by half a percent over the last time I addressed this subject. And a lot of that's, I think, due to kind of the influx of some liberal polls that have kind of, pushed the average in a certain way. I mean, and I, but I want to kind of get into what credibility you want to put on things, how to look at it. One thing that you don't take these polls at face value. That's not a good idea. They're not all polls are not created equal. And I can explain why that is pretty clear cut because if you take something like the Morning Consult poll as an example, or this recent NBC poll, and look at their margin of error, and then compare it to something like the latest Rasmussen, which has Trump up by 2%, and their margin of error, you can see that basically they're both outside each other's margin of error. I mean, the probability that random sampling is due to the difference is almost nothing. Okay, so that indicates there's a methodology difference in the polls that you see. And when you look at things like even the New York Times Siena as a tie, for example, and that's not a pro-Republican source, obviously. You may see if there is a deliberate biasing, it's unclear exactly where that would go. So I think that things are a lot better than the polls would indicate, and maybe the trend may start going our way now. I know that there's been a little discussion of Trump's statement that he doesn't want to debate anymore, and I kind of, more I think about it, I kind of agree with that because basically, when you look at it, the debating environment, which turns out to be kind of biased and focused on insults and snark and stuff like that, probably favors her because the one thing she's got going is to attack Trump, right? She's not very strong on actual issues, however. So that I think that after having debated twice and both debates ended up to his detriment, one because he won and the other one because he lost. Or I don't think he really lost, but I mean, you know what I'm saying? It didn't come out as good as he wanted to anyhow. And so they both didn't help too much because the first one ran Biden out of the race, which was probably not helpful. And recently with Jill actually chairing the cabinet meeting, my theory has been kind of confirmed who really was running the government all along. So anyhow, but basically, to get into this thing more specifically, I would say that one thing I look at is the fact that there's a set of states in which the Democrats don't just win, but they win by really large percentages, well over 20 to in some cases as much as 30%. Like California, I think around 23%. New York, similar. Those are really high population states. Even Massachusetts with a higher percentage, although it's a smaller state. And so when you look at these Democrat states and compare their overvote, if you will, as the more votes they need than a simple 50% plus one vote to win, and then look at the Republican states where they win, there's like something like 7 million additional votes based on the 2020 election, and out of 155 million, I think, is total votes. So it ends up with about 4.5% of you might call it extra, you might call it net wasted Democrat votes in some sense. So one way of looking at this is that the remaining the selected states, which we call the big battleground states of going from Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia, Arizona, and Nevada. They seem to be the ones that are being targeted. And you look at the size of those, and if you look at the real clear average of those, they're basically at dead even. Technically, right now, as of this recording, Trump up by 0.1% on all of them, with them ahead in some and behind in others. But if we look at that and look at that 4.5% and take the real clear average of 2.2%, then really Trump should be ahead 2.3% in these battleground states, with all other things being equal to the way it was before. And there's no real evidence that it's moved in any way, particularly in Republican favor in those other states. I mean, for instance, the big states where Republicans may very well be likely to win, or most likely to win, of Texas and Florida, for example, they're only up about 6%, far cry from the 23% in California, if you will. And so what that says is that there's an inconsistency between the state polls that we're looking at and the national polls. And so based on the national polls, Trump should be ahead by about 2.3% in the battleground states. So anyway, if you like these videos, please give me a like. I'm looking for more subscriptions, and of course you can click the bell for notifications on YouTube, and you can also find me on Rumble, and the information on how to get there is in the description below, of course. So yeah, so that indicates to me that there's more likely to be an error in the state polls, because I think statistically it's easier to, the polling organizations are kind of more used to the national polling. I think state polling has a little bit of a nuance to it, and do it right. You know, some organizations are better at some states than others, for instance. And it may well be also that the state polls are spread over a longer period of time, typically, if I look at the average. And so where you get more of a contemporary up-to-date number in the national. So I tend to think that Trump is actually probably a bit more ahead in the actual battleground states than you would tend to get from just the general looking at the polling that's out there. The other thing is, which may also favor Trump, well, there's always what I call the Wilder effect, because, for instance, you won't see any Wilder effect in a Rasmussen poll because they're not talking to a live human being. And so there's no feeling that you should give a certain answer. But, you know, that some people that are not hardcore Trump, you know, might actually have a tendency to do if they're kind of squishy, kind of voters, independent maybe, but it's kind of squishy. So I think that's one aspect. And the other aspect is you look at something like the recent NBC poll. It's getting a little touted, which has Harris ahead by 5% nationally. But when you look at the other key indicators, like who's better on the economy, who's better on inflation, who's better on the border, they all come out significantly in favor of Trump. And then, so if all the key, and there's also the issues were rated the highest. So the question is, then why would they say they're voting for Harris if they prefer Trump on the key issues? This could also be the idea that, well, they think that the caller wants them to hear Harris, and so they kind of don't want to say Trump. But they may actually be going to vote Trump even though they're not saying it. I think that's a possibility we need to look at here too. So I wouldn't give up yet. The one problem I see is money. I mean, I'm seeing ads where I am, which is a state that probably is not considered battleground, is probably more pro. And I'm seeing Harris ads, and I'm not seeing Trump ads, you know, where I am. So I'm looking at this saying, I think Harris has more money and has money to spend on things that maybe are long shots, maybe to help under lower rank, you know, the Senate races, the House races, things like that, by trying to pull down the overall Republican average. So, and I suspect that could be the motivation for doing it, but the fact they have the money to do it suggests we need to give more money to Trump and Republicans, and I think that's something I would recommend. I'd also recommend, whatever you do, don't give them your cell phone number unless you want to have endless texts. But somewhere or other, you have to have communication, like email or something. If I have to get deluged, I prefer emails to text, because with text, when I get a text during the day, I'd like it to be something I really want to react to. Or emails, I'll just look at it once a day and go through them and do a mass delete on anything I'm not interested in, read the ones I care about. So, but everybody's got their own preference on that. I digress, as they say. But at any rate, I think the Republicans could use a little more money. And you know, Bongino has the right idea. You know, get people out to vote. especially if you're in a state where early voting is already starting. Um, that's always good. I I don't know. I'm not sure. I really would prefer to go to mail-in balloting early, because unless you think there's any chance at all that you won't be available to vote during the actual in-person voting. I still think that's a more reliable way to get your vote counted. Um, little glitches on those write-in ballots sometimes get them thrown out. Maybe not if you're a Democrat, but probably if you're a Republican. So I think I think in person is probably better. But anyhow, so that's kind of my assessment at the moment. I think it's still a little bit scary, but I think Trump is hanging in there pretty good. He's having some good rallies now finally, and I think that's good. It's like sometimes I'm a little bit more worried about his personal safety than I am actually him winning the election now. I think with two attempts on his life that are clearly been noted, and you're going to wonder what's going on there. Um, Bongino raised the issue that there could be either a compromise of the Secret Service communication channels, or even some kind of a insider or inside leaks from the security, which is tipping these people off. I don't know if that's true or not, but it's possible. I mean, I said early on that when the attempt at lawfare to eliminate Trump through lawfare failed, that the deep state very well might go kinetic, and that might be the case. I mean, and certainly this latest guy is obviously doing it because he totally buys into the Democrat narrative on Trump, plus the fact that Trump isn't a really strong supporter of continuing the Ukraine war as we've had it, and this guy is, I think, clearly indicates to me the motivations there. Fortunately, he failed, and the security around Trump seems to be being ramped up from where it had been. But the risks are not zero here, and let's hope that people can, and get some more security for him, and hopefully he'll be a little more careful too, because it's dangerous. And so that's kind of the situation on all that. And we'll see on the other topic that we hit quite a bit in the last video. Zelensky is in country as of this recording, and will be for a few days. And we'll see whether or not Biden reverses the decision that came out last week with the prime minister on the idea of sending weapons to strike into Ukraine. Into Russia. Ukraine strikes deeper into Russia. They did manage to use apparently their own existing drones to blow up some ammo dumps. So we'll just have to see what ends up happening there and what kind of escalation might happen if they do it, if any. That's a complex subject, but we'll have to stay tuned in on that one. So anyway, I'll be wrapping this up for now. I think we can hope for the best here in the election, and of course the Senate races are key too. Certainly the Montana race. Anybody has any extra support to give to Sheehy, I would recommend it. That's one we need to nail down. And some of the states that, I've seen some polls that look a little scary, even on Florida and Texas on the Senate races. I don't really think the Democrats are going to win those. But if you're in those states, those are always good ones to support. And of course, you've got and there's some chance for McCormick in Pennsylvania, particularly if Trump really does very well there. It's possibly could pull McCormick over the line, potentially. So anyhow, so that's kind of it for now. I'll be wrapping this up for this time, and until next time. By the way, we'll be posting this, of course, as always, on YouTube and Rumble, and the address of my social media accounts are in the description below.